Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. We're so delighted that you took some time to join us. In the chat, please do let us know where you're joining from and how the weather is. For those of us where the weather's not so great, we can project and join in on the gloriousness. It's a lovely day here on the west coast of Turkey, high of 25 degrees with all kinds of sunshine, and really excited to be with you, to be able to bring together a really special group of people. We're delighted to share some of the insights and the learnings that developed and emerged from the Peace and Security Changemakers learning journey. So this capstone gathering is really about sharing those learnings, sharing those insights, but also, and clearly we wouldn't be doing our job as futurists if we didn't ask the question, what's next? And you'll hear a little bit about some of what's on the horizon and some opportunities also to connect with the change makers, the mentors, and again, ideas for what could come after. Before we get into that, just a little bit of an introduction for those of you who aren't familiar. The School of International Futures is a nonprofit whose aim is to make better use of futures and foresight methods so that we can improve the present by focusing on long-term thinking, in a variety of different ways, whether it's intergenerational justice, of course, using futures and foresight tools as we did here to be able to explore large questions like global peace and security, and really to support communities, organizations, and governments to help to understand and make sense of how we can actually shape a better future for all. My name is John Sweeney. I'm the Transformative Foresight Lead at the School of International Futures. Part of the awesome team, there were some others definitely behind the scenes who made this happen, but you can see one here and one here, at least for me, are Darcy and, sorry, whoa, I combined your names, sorry, Daria and Marcy. Clearly my tea hasn't kicked in yet. And of course, ask them to introduce themselves in just a bit as we get going, but really want to take a minute just to help to welcome everyone and to frame exactly what we're doing here today. We very much want to take a moment to thank Ploughshares. This project would not have been possible without Ploughshares. I don't know if John Carl made it. It's quite early in the morning on the East Coast. Possibly he might join us. So this project was made possible with funding from Ploughshares and really was designed as a pilot. We'll be talking more about that in just a bit. But the aim of this was really to bring together peace and security professionals, certainly looking for people who maybe are involved in different ways. So lots of flexibility, even with what we mean with regards to peace and security, and to create and to curate a learning journey that uses futures and foresight tools and methods to help to develop a new vision and to think about what then some of those impacts might mean for them in their own work, in their organizations, but also then more broadly, what does this mean for peace and security globally? So we don't want to waste any further time. We want to dive in and ultimately have a chance to talk and also hear from you as well. And really excited to hand it over to Marcy, who's going to take us a bit through the journey. And we have a little bit of an agenda for today as well, which I think is the next slide.
Thanks, John.
Marcy, over to you.
Lovely to see you. So my name is Marcella Sapaya, and I'm the creative lead and network weaver with the School of International Futures. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today for this capstone gathering. I'll just take you through this agenda very quickly. So as you know, we've been running this Peace and Security Changemakers journey pilot, and we would love to give you an overview of what that journey has involved. We will talk to how it links to the next generation foresight practitioners and the transformation missions at the School of International Futures before sharing some key insights and highlights from the journey itself. We are joined by a number of change makers today, some of which you'll be hearing from in the session as they share insights from the journey around implications that have emerged from this work, and particularly insights for the nuclear community, before moving into reflections and insights from the changemakers for peace and security more generally and the overall journey. We are also very fortunate to be joined by some of our incredible mentors who are professionals from across a number of fields with varied valuable experiences across peace and security, as well as futures and foresight. And they've been kind enough to offer up some of their time to support the changemakers on this journey. We will hear reflections from those mentors before opening the floor for discussion to hear your thoughts, perhaps gauge some responses to what you've heard, but also encourage any connections that might come to mind with the work that you and the broader community are doing. And then we'll close off with some next steps, including the launch of the community of practice. So let's dive right in and take a look at the journey. So we've been convening this Peace and Security Changemakers program or learning journey, and we've been bringing together a group of intergenerational global practitioners consisting of mentors, next generation leaders, and change makers to generate forward-looking insights through this intergenerational foresight process to enhance anticipatory mindsets and develop skills in futures and foresight that we hope can then be utilized within the peace and security sectors to help us think differently about that future. And through the journey, we connected the cohort with mentors from global peace and security and beyond to apply the knowledge learned to real world challenges, which we hope is a starting point for transformative initiatives and engagements within global peace and security that can be taken forward by next generation leaders and change makers, but also by the wider community. So the journey started in May and took place over an 8-week period through a series of summer workshops supported by mentoring sessions designed to help expand and stretch thinking. The journey centered around this focal question, which was, in light of the shifting global peace and security landscape, how can and might new models for nuclear security inform how to reimagine security more broadly? And this was explored within the workshops, where we started off by identifying emerging issues and drivers of change for peace and security, before utilizing scenario tools to imagine what those new futures might look like and generate some scenario narratives for peace and security out to 2073, so 50 years from now. And we built this out further by exploring the impacts and implications of the scenarios before moving to a visioning process to articulate positive images or preferred futures for peace and security, and emerging with a collective vision created by the change makers. We also spent some time moving towards integrating these futures and thinking through specific implications of these visions for not just peace and security, but also for the nuclear community through a particular focus group, before finally exploring what collective and individual actions we might want to see taken forward, including what could be continued through a community of practice, for example, which we are looking to launch, and I'll speak a bit on that later on. So I'm going to pass over to Daria.
Thank you, Marcy. Hi, everyone. My name is Daria Voschai, joining in from Slovenia. I guess it's quite autumny, almost wintry. I've been with the School of International Futures for almost 4 years now, working as a project manager and a network weaver on this particular project. And I wanted to briefly talk about how this particular journey and the idea about change makers actually ties into some of the other work that we're doing at the School of International Futures. And that is the Next Generation's Foresight Practitioners Network, or NGFP, which is basically a global community of the largest global networks of next generation future alert change makers. And we've just announced our 2023 cohort of the NGFP award winners. I'm going to share the link later so you can also have a look. And we've selected winners who are working across 7 different transformation missions that you can see on the slide here. Thank you, Marcy. And that is to say that this specific program really covers 3 key areas of what we do at SOIF, including nuclear security, peace building, and emerging technologies. And we're really excited to have identified several champions who are going to share their insights about the learning journey with you later today. Thank you. And back to you, Marcy.
Thanks, Daria. So we're going to actually stop talking now, because really you're here to hear from the change makers and the mentors that have been part of this journey. So I'm going to go straight into nuclear insights and invite our change makers to come forward. First of all, Declan Penrose, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marcella. And yeah, I just want to start by thanking everybody at the School of International Futures for all the work that went into the learning journey that we've been on. It was obviously a lot of work and lots of sessions over the whole summer. So yes, my name is Declan Penrose, and I am a policy fellow at BASIC. I work on the Inclusive International Security Programme, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Manchester. So if we go to the next slide, please. And my kind of main takeaway, I guess what I would like to talk about today is the using futures and foresight to imagine multiple nuclear futures. As somebody working in the nuclear field, I do really think that this method can have a significant positive impact on nuclear and wider security and the collective futures of our world, and to get us to think in a much more collaborative way. So by bringing together a diverse group of experts in these focus groups, we could use collaborative future thinking to imagine many different nuclear futures. So along with a wide range of ideas, of the ideas that diversity brings, the way we were asked to think about these questions really helped us to imagine different possibilities. So this was done partially by asking us to imagine the future over different periods of time. So some of it would be a shorter term scenario, sometimes a medium, sometimes a longer term, going up to, as was mentioned earlier, 2073. And this really helped us not to get too caught up in specific developments or specific time periods, because something, say if you're thinking about, say, a technology that might be available in like 50 years and you're clinging on to this to be the big game changer, if you lose sight of what will happen in the meantime before then, it can really change the scenario when you're in through all these different events that could happen before then. So that was a really important way that changed the way we thought about it. Also, about security in terms of thinking in a more interconnected and collaborative way, because states in this scenario, they understood how interconnected and intertwined their security was, and that creating individualistic deterrence-oriented security policy increased and entrenched this division and instability that we see today. So states would come to the realization that they needed to change. The states instead would come together and discuss their shared security more often. Next slide, please. So what did our final vision for nuclear security in 2073 look like? So we imagine that global peace and security is much more stable, equitable, and interconnected. So this is driven by increased accountability, collaboration, and openness. States are more honest and transparent with each other. So this is a world where things like strategic ambiguity would potentially be a thing of the past, to reduce the room for misinterpretation and uncertainty, which adds to fear and deterrence kind of based thinking. We also try to act in the collective interest of a diverse range of stakeholders, including NGOs and other non-state actors in the dialogue and decision-making process. We also collaborate on tackling climate change. We envision finally achieving the elimination of nuclear weapons under the scenario, and developing shared and effective nuclear energy safeguards and the reduction of security risks. So continuing to collaborate on our energy needs. We also create and share formal and informal networks and structures, such as global institutions, political bodies, NGOs, and equal opportunity funds, to diversify who is involved in these conversations, decision-making process. It is also essential to uphold international legal enforcement mechanisms, particularly as this future would have many more arms agreements and keeping the role of deterrence to a minimum. And our inclusion of other stakeholders would promote a down-to-up decision-making process. And then lastly, to go along with, clearly to go along with these improvement in comprehensive arms control, we would see a significant increase in norms-based approaches to try to encourage this big change in thinking. And the big normative change would be the collective thinking and understanding that states are not just are reliant on each other for their security, and as long as states don't work together, it's very difficult to create a stable security and nuclear future. So yeah, that's the end of my talk. I just want to say thanks again to the School of International Futures team. It was a really, really interesting process, and I look forward to being part of the Changemakers going forwards. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Declan. We're going to keep moving. Up next, we have Valeria, and I'll just remind everyone, please also do introduce yourself as you kick off. So Valeria, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Valeria Hesse. I am a fellow at the Odessa Center for Non-Proliferation and a research consultant at Open Nuclear Network in Vienna, and a management and research consultant at Atomic Reporters. So next slide, please. I really appreciate Declan describing the process, how we came to this possible radical change vision. And you can see the vision, or at least a version of it, the last that I have on my record so far, on the right side of the slide. I will be a little bit shorter because I wanted to kind of highlight specific moments that I think are important takeaways for the nuclear field. So first off, in the scenario, the overwhelming impression for me was that everyone came down to the willingness of eliminating nuclear weapons. And at the moment, we have a completely different situation where the debate between the supporters of nuclear deterrence and supporters of nuclear ban have a very heated international discussion over which approach should be dominant and what is better for security. And as we overwhelmingly found out, the two teams that left at the end of the program had pretty much the same or almost the same vision of there being no nuclear weapons. So I identified a couple of gaps that I see at the moment within the community. First, we have to destigmatize disarmament work, because frequently now all work in nuclear realm that it touches upon nuclear disarmament is seen as weak or sometimes even stupid. And one of the good examples for me was last year's Carnegie Nuclear Policy Conference, where there was a discussion between a French expert and an Austrian expert. One was very pro nuclear deterrence, the other was very much pro nuclear disarmament, and they had a very informed, logical conversation, which I think needs to be more of, like there needs to be more of, because only with logic and with logical explanations of like what are the differences and why one side thinks that one thing and the other side thinks the other thing, we can actually come to any sort of progress in this area. As you see, a lot of the things in the scenario, and as Declan said, touch upon acting in the collective interests of diverse range of stakeholders. And as I mentioned, this dialogue between deterrence and disarmament communities plays into it, because as it happens, so disarmament supporters also do not have an option to be under the nuclear umbrella, or do not have an option to have nuclear weapons, and neither they should have this option, because we know that we as a global community live in the world guided by the 1968 non-proliferation treaty. But also we, in order to move a little bit more in the direction of acting in collective interest, we should focus on strategic empathy, or what I call pragmatic internationalism, which would be basically a system based on the deep understanding and proper reasoning that enhancing security and prosperity anywhere in the world is not just a noble goal, but also a security, economic, and environmental necessity. And since from how it looks now, the top-down approach does not work. And even if some communities within particular countries that have nuclear weapons have interest in moving towards nuclear disarmament, their voices are rarely heard. And so one of the ways to actually make this discussion more prominent could be to establish government accountability through independent research and investigations, like NGO investigations or journalist investigation, again, being given that we destigmatize disarmament in some sense. And obviously, the key thing here is the evidence-based approach, informed approach, where people not just emotionally say that disarmament is good and we all have to have strategic empathy, but providing evidence why it is important, why it is beneficial, not only for those states who by default already are the supporters, but also to those states who kind of are on the other side of the debate at this moment. And obviously, one of the ways to promote NGO research and support journalist investigations, for example, is to basically provide people with financial opportunities to do those, to perform those. And so because we know mostly people who fund research related to nuclear topics are the countries who actually have nuclear weapons, and they not necessarily are interested in funneling money in something that goes contrary to their interest or perceived interest. And so one of the ways is to fund entities beyond mainstream entities, to include alternative voices in the discussion. and descending topic, descending voices. Also, one of the important mechanisms from my perspective as a Ukrainian would be establishing equal opportunity funds, because even when it comes to international organizations, frequently people who come from less financially stable countries have less opportunities, especially at the beginning of their careers, because the relevant nuclear nuclear positions might not be available in their countries, and most of the lower level positions in international organizations are sponsored by states. So if there would be, for example, a fund for sponsoring junior professional officers at the IAEA from various countries on a competition basis, it could help to also bring more expertise from countries that are less economically developed or stable. Also, one of the ideas that I had is to introduce and normalize crowdfunding. For example, Patreon or YouTube things for the NGOs or for particular journalists. And also, one of the instruments that is available to us now is social media to reach beyond the communities who are already interested in the topics that relate to nuclear weapons and disarmament and nuclear energy, because if you create interesting content that could grab the attention of the audience, and explain why it is important to them, the social media can give a huge boost to people basically caring about those topics. However, one of the things that comes on in between the desired future and this down to up approach is the enforcement. Okay, we bring this information out. How do we enforce disarmament? And this is something that I encourage everyone to think through, and this lies ahead of us in our work. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Valeria. And just a quick note, and of course, to thank again Ploughshares. The project that we got the funding came from the Equity Rises grant initiative. And ultimately that is about, of course, bringing forward what you mentioned. So trying to ensure that we do have a diverse range of voices and perspectives. And of course, given the focus of Ploughshares' work, that's why we wanted to take time to ensure that we had insights specifically with regard to nuclear security. However, the project in and of itself was looking broadly at global peace and security. So we're going to transition to hear from some other changemakers, but also we'll hear from Declan and Valeria again, to bring forward reflections and insights about process, about practice, and ultimately what their experience was, what they're taking away individually, and of course, what they're taking away for their work as well. So we'll invite up now Sebastian, who's going to talk about the value of foresight in global security affairs. Sebastian, over to you.
Yes, thank you, John. And yeah, I also want to start off with, of course, thanking the School of International Futures, Marcella, Daria, and John especially, of course, but the whole team behind it for this exciting opportunity to join this course. I mean, for me, it was particularly exciting, I thought, because I come from the field of geopolitics and international security, but I work as a futurist. So I had fun on both sides there. So I was able to dive into all kinds of contexts a little bit. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide, please. So the value of foresight in global security affairs, I just drew together some really quick points that I want to share with you today. A little bit of a meta discussion on basically why is foresight important in this context, and how can it change perspectives. So the first thing I want to talk about quickly is thinking the unthinkable. What the crystal ball is actually worth. Do we actually need it? What does it actually mean to look into the future, to use the future? Then from known knowns to unknown unknowns, all this mix of accepting different kinds of futures, knowing different kinds of futures, and ultimately trying to surf with the uncertainty of what futures bring for us. And lastly, quickly about the expect the unexpected, basically that's asking the question of, are we actually diving into the future? Are we using the future, or are we really reflecting and reacting in the present? So the next slide. Yes, first point. So thinking the unthinkable. I thought this was very fitting, a little bit of a crystal ball, because it's mostly the oracle that people see when they recognize you as a futurist, and then people say, okay, basically tell me what the future is going to look like. And of course, I mean, as we all know, that's not possible. So I particularly really enjoyed how the foresight process was structured here, and how we merged it together with global security, because we had a structured process. And for example, on the left-hand side, you see a 4-step process where we went to understanding the context. So we did a scoping of basically the influences that we have. Here we use things like the weight of the past, the push of the present, and the pull of the future. So basically accepting also in your own context, as Declan mentioned as well, to bring in multiple perspectives that are not just based on the present, but also of the past and of the future. As a second point, we went also into creating and contrasting coherent futures, so ordering a little bit. And this point is really important, I think, because here we dive into the multitude of futures. So we pluralize the future. It's not just the future anymore, but we have multiple futures that we work with. And that gives us the breadth and the width of imagination that we're actually looking for when working with the future. As a third point, we work through the consequences, so we investigate things. And with this breadth of multitude of futures, we try to build scenarios. We try to come up with different things that could happen, that might happen, that we desire to happen, that are completely outrageous maybe, or weird, but still help us in our ways of using the future and understanding the present in a new way. At last, of course, and a very important part, and maybe the most difficult one, is embed these insights into your work, obviously. So foresight in this process was introduced as a very versatile concept. So you're able to integrate not only methods, but the ways of thinking and the ways of using the future. So thinking the unthinkable actually helps also in your working context. Next slide, please. So from known knowns to unknown unknowns. I hope I don't misspell this in the next couple of minutes. But I'm sure some of you know, and also in the global security context, there was this interview with then Defense Secretary of the United States, Donald Rumsfeld, in 2002, when asked about weapons of mass destruction. He in Iraq, he said this. He said that he was. That there are known knowns and there are unknown unknowns. So things we know and we understand, but also things we don't know, and then we also don't understand. So this is a bit of the scope that the future sometimes also deals with, because we tend to accept the things we know and we understand, but don't really go into the other three aspects. So in the end, I think it's important to say that we give ourselves sort of a baseline, a foundation, and tell ourselves, okay, the future does not exist because it will never be in the present. Hence, it will always exist, or it only exists in our imagination. So this, in my opinion, also how we did it in the course, was that it really enriches our discussions about global security by not only widening the scope of possibility of what I've talked about, but also thinking about things that are most probable. So I really go into the most probable things, deal with it, but also widen my scope, and I dare to envision, I dare to dream, I dare to desire futures that are maybe paired with the probable ones. Then I go even further and go into alternatives. So I'm open for alternatives that might happen, because I cannot predict everything and I cannot desire everything. Later, I also tend to acknowledge the weird and the odd that can also sometimes help me, might not come true, but can sometimes help me in a way of basically fostering my imagination and widening the scope of my research or my work. And I tend to embrace uncertainty, and not in a way that we love that uncertain things come true, but more in the sense that you accept uncertainty as part of as part of working towards the future, as part of the present, actually. And in the end, this helps us to be open for emergence and try to basically figure out this
that is applied to this type of analysis or foresight. And so this uncertainty kind of makes people shy away from the topics. And it also may seem like a little bit too in the weeds, because obviously the futures work requires a lot of creativity and a lot of like imagination. But people frequently have a hard time understanding how does, some exercise that can be very creative and can in general be useful in formulating a certain future help in my work today. And obviously everyone is, maybe on a payroll or maybe on a project work, everyone has limited time. So being able to see or to foresee this practical application is very useful and can attract more people to collaborating with the futures community. So in terms of the particular experience that we had, I had a couple of recommendations that maybe for future cohorts could be useful. Basically, like a 101 e-learning course defining key terms and kind of giving a brief introduction into the futures and foresight tools is could be very, very useful, because then when we actually get to like the visioning work, we could start up much, much faster, just going through like the high level recollection of what we learned in the 101 e-learning. Also, a useful thing would be to have, a clearly outlined goals and tasks for the program itself, and for, the particular intersession or, just session within the framework of like 1 week. Just outline the plan in the beginning of the presentation. It also would be very helpful in terms of what I mentioned about how does it help me today, to hear success stories in practice where futures and foresight tools were applied. And I know the UN works a lot with this. So hearing those success stories, hearing those examples also would be of use. Maybe when we go through presentations, it could be useful to go through them in a little bit slower pace, because the community of practice frequently doesn't have much familiarity with futures and foresight tools. And so will be easier to digest at a slower pace. Yeah, and then maybe a little bit more time for working as a group on site, but to be able to kind of have those breakout sessions and go back, because I felt like we missed, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes each time. And then maybe it would be also good to have like different levels for different groups. Like, for example, there is a group 101, there was a group 102, there was a group like 202, so that, the community of practice could actually learn the tools and use them in practice, instead of just like rushing through it and then maybe kind of going back to some of the tools, but not actually understanding fully and not using it on a daily basis. And the last slide, please. So yeah, in terms of my goals pre-course, I wanted to improve the understanding of futures and foresight tools, which did work, but also I feel like I need more and I want more and I want to dive deeper. That's why I said plus minus. Also, I did find applicability of the tools that we learned in my work, and I'm going to use it. And then see a variation of possible futures. And I put a minus there because actually we came up with the same aspirational vision, which is not actually a minus, it's a plus, that, we share the same goals and the same vision, how we can make the world better. So post-course, I would like to learn more tools and their applications, participate participate in futures or scenario exercises led by futures and foresight practitioners to basically see how it applies in practice, like as a voluntary participation was bringing my expertise in nuclear topics. Also find funding for managing a project, hopefully an interdisciplinary project specifically focused on nuclear futures that could help us bridge the gaps with the vision. And also organize an event or series with focus on deterrence versus disarmament discussion and engage prominent experts on both sides. And also I wanted to start a campaign on social media and beyond among professionals in the nuclear field, supporting diversity and inclusion and combating discrimination in careers in the nuclear field, because that seems like one of the major problems that I have faced in my career. And also, I know a lot of other people who do not have introduction to these topics or to these communities, even because such simple issues like visas and stuff. So that is always something to keep in mind. I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity to participate, and I'm looking forward to further work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valeria. Also commend you on the critical and creative feedback. And you're currently in first place in the meme competition. So just want to note that as well. We have a few more change makers to go, and then we're going to hear from the mentors. We're running a little bit long, but I want to just note, I'll ask the mentors to shorten slightly so that we have all the change makers have their original time. So we're going to move on to Husni, who's going to share about foresight for climate, peace, and security, navigating tomorrow's challenges. Husni, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. This is Husni. I'm from and based in Sri Lanka. And my work primarily revolves around the intersection of climate change, democracy, and technology. And in addition to the some of the interesting assignments I do in this domain, I also lead the program strategy of the Impact Voices, which is a social innovation intermediary, a bit of a one-of-a-kind initiative in this part of the world that we are looking at reimagining approaches for civil society, economics, as well as the governance in this part of the world, as well as two areas that we primarily focus with our work, that is systems thinking and strategic foresight. And that is also one reason I was super excited to be part of this journey, because it would really help me to sort of, understand and work with a community who are like-minded, and to see how best I can bring back those learning to my community as well. And in terms of today's presentation, instead of getting into the technicalities, I was thinking of focusing more on my learning journey and reflect a bit on that, because I'm pretty sure with the community of practice and the further discussions, we'll be able to explore more about this very interesting domain, peace, security, and climate. But today, my focus would be primarily looking at some of the reflections from my journey and see how best we all can take something out of that conversation. If you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. Great. So this is one of my favorite questions I ask whenever I have these conversations around futures, especially with our colleagues and the friends from civil society and also activists, because I also wear both hats, being an activist as well as a development professional. One of the questions I always ask, are we shaping the future or busy reacting to the present? And one of the challenges that we always have is to take that time off, to stop, look back, look at the bigger picture, and work with a community that is like-minded and willing to work and collaborate, and to see how best we can sort of work on the strategic foresight. For me, this has been a big question mark in my career, because everyone is so busy changing the world, and I have been looking out for communities where I can actually discuss more about shaping the future while busy reacting to the present as well. So basically, that's where I found this particularly interesting community, complemented with an amazing journey, thanks to the SOIF team for putting that journey together. So to summarize my sort of reflections, if you can move to the next slide, I have basically put 3 icons. I didn't want to put text because then you will busy reading the text and might not necessarily focus on my intervention here. So basically, these are the 3 key takeaways for me as a someone who is interested in strategic foresight. And I also thought maybe as a community, I think it's important that we look at these three elements that really emerged for me out of this particular journey. So I basically look at the first one. I think some of the key takeaways for me is that, we will definitely talk about the future strategic foresight tools, and we are all sort of, very much excited to learn about it. But I think if we really want to incorporate these learnings reflection in our program strategy and the program design work that we do, I think what is important is that, our personal time. So while we are being part of such a community, I think what really works for me in this particular journey is that my personal time that I spent beyond the community and the journey and the sessions. And that really stood up for me to have more wisdom, more insights and the thinking. So first insight or the reflection that I had from this journey is that, it's not just about being part of a journey or a learning session, but more I spend my personal time on these areas, thinking around and reflecting some of the conversations that we have had and the amazing learning materials they shared. I think it really helped me to see the bigger pictures, understand certain things that I didn't realize during the session. So one of the key things is about being a strategic foresight practitioner is that, how much of a time that you spend and also how much you're willing to spend on your own, looking at that bigger picture as well. And the second interesting part about this journey that I found is the collective intelligence and the power of collective effort that some of our friends mentioned before as well as I completely agree with Valerie and others who mentioned about how it is important that we work in an ecosystem, that we bring diverse stakeholders, because sometimes we learn in silos, we learn on our own, or we learn with our own known communities. But something I really loved about this particular journey is that we had a diverse group coming from different levels of experience and domains. And that really helped us to sort of understand different perspectives, reflect on it, as well as to see how best we can also sharpen our thinking, looking at that particular ecosystem. So second part, I think it's also something that I'll be personally taking forward as part of my journey of this particular initiative, is to see like how best we can always connect with that diverse stakeholders and work as a community, because that really help us to sort of take our conversations forward and understand. And something I really, if I reflect on some of the activities that we did, I think we all did this particular statement, how do we see this by 2073, right, in 50 years time. And for me, I wrote it down, global peace and security meant collective well-being for me. So for me, before I start this journey, I never thought, okay, because I was also looking at all those, traditional norms, the definitions and the things that we hear, and then things that we have been forced to think because of our work environment and the place that we live. But again, for me, at the end of the day, at the journey, I realized it's all about the collective well-being, and also how that collective well-being is driven by the values such as transparency, accountability, and environmental stewardship when it comes to climate peace and security. So all these insights is a journey. And then I really would like to thank once again this particular amazing community, not only for the facilitators, but also this amazing peer learners. Because of you, I think I was able to reflect and understand and unlock my potential as well. And the third one, I think that is where I think we are heading to, how we will continue to work as a global community, because this is also something really important as someone coming from the global south. Something I have always looked at is to see like how best we can work across the continents and to understand the systems, because we can't talk about the foresight without systems thinking, and also having that bigger exposure and seeing the bigger picture. So these are the three things that I felt that something that really worked for me as sort of the qualities that I wanted to have as a strategic foresight practitioner. As well, I thought like if we can really focus on our initiatives around these lines, it will be helpful for us to sort of take the conversations forward as well. If you can move to the final slide. So for me, and this next one, I think it's a repetition, yeah. Okay, fine. So I basically put another slide. It's about the what's next again. So it's pretty much for me, this learning journey has been very much interesting learning journey, but also something I realize, just because we spent 6 months together doesn't mean that we know everything or we have done with our analysis. It's the ongoing journey, right? So we just started off, and it's also about how much sort of, we co-create and contribute to this particular community of practice, because every day, every week, every month, every year, you will have new insights. And as practitioners, it's very important that we keep ourselves updated time to time, and we never get tired of thinking about the future using these tools as well. So my last point is basically it's that my personal commitment for the community of practice, as well as why I see it is important that we need to commit and co-create this community of practice, because that will really help us to shape our future with these engagements, as well as it will give us that unique platform that we will never find otherwise, because we have already worked together, and I'm pretty sure more people to join this community, and then together we will be able to do some amazing stuff. So thank you once again to creating this space, as well as giving us this opportunity to share our insights and reflections as well. Over to you, John.
Great. Thank you so much, Husni. We're going to move on. Emma, over to you. I think maybe since Emma, you're not using slides, maybe we'll just stop the share screen for just a moment, and that way we can all look at each other. Okay, perfect. Brilliant. Emma, welcome, and over to you.
Great. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Loudon, and I'm a political officer at the SHAPE Group, a not-for-profit conflict resolution and mediation organisation. In this role, I run private back-channel, sort of unofficial dialogues between Gulf states and Iran, more specifically GCC member states, Iran and Iraq, with the objective of working with participants to develop competence-building measures that promote mutual regional security in the Middle East. Prior to joining this 3-month program with the School of International Futures, I hadn't even heard of Future and Foresight, let alone had any experience of how it can be used. So as you can imagine, it's been a pretty eye-opening experience. So from this kind of low level of experience, there have been a myriad of things that I've learned, but out of everything, there are 3 aspects I would like to briefly touch upon. Firstly, the reframing of my conceptualization of what future means. Secondly, the role of different perspectives. And finally, how I intend to take forward what I've learned into my own work. So firstly, on a very broad level, the program has encouraged me to shift my mindset on what future means. At the outset of the program and in my current role, I focused on working with participants in our dialogues to outline competence building measures that could be implemented tomorrow, whilst also looking ahead to understand what could be feasible in the future. But this future was always within a time frame of between 5 to 10 years. And although working on such short time frames certainly has its place, I think the program has certainly demonstrated to me the value of following more systematic approaches and thinking about the future in much longer terms, in terms of 50 years plus, rather than 10 to 15. So secondly, the program has underlined the importance of different perspectives on imagining different futures. I think previously I was subconsciously factoring in historical factors, the current situation, and what could happen in the future to plan the dialogues. But the program has taught me about the futures triangle, key signals, drivers, trends, and it's encouraged me to more consciously and systematically map these out and understand how they're interacting and shaping the environment I'm working in. In addition, hearing people's different perspectives on the key signals, drivers, trends, and their view on the relative importance has encouraged and challenged me to identify and question my own assumptions, as other changemakers have also highlighted today, and begun to train myself to question everything and assume nothing when thinking about different versions of the future. It certainly led me to think more creatively in imagining these different futures, from whether that be no change at all through to something completely radically different from today. Finally, From what I've learned over the last few months, there are a few ways I'll seek to take forward this work. Firstly, by being part of the peace and security community of practice, I certainly have a newfound understanding and respect for the role that futures and foresight can play in peace and security, and I look forward to participating in this community as well as expanding it. And on this note of working to expand the community, I'm also an ambassador for the RUSI Next Gen initiative, which brings together the next generation of leaders and thinkers in global affairs, and I'm exploring how I can use this position to give others the opportunity, like myself, to understand more and get involved in the futures and foresight. And finally, I will seek to incorporate more futures and foresight approaches into my work. I'll seek to place greater emphasis in thinking about the future in a longer time frame and bringing in as many different stakeholders' perspectives as possible. So just to conclude, I think this experience has certainly has taught me a lot on futures and foresight and has given me a foundation from which to learn more about this approach. And I look forward to beginning to apply it in my own work in the Middle East. But as well as increasing my knowledge, the programme has offered an opportunity to meet and connect with my peers. And I've met people from across the world working both within the conflict resolution sector, but also in very different areas, even if still within the broad peace and security umbrella. I hope I'll be able to work with some of those I've met through this programme in the future. Finally, a massive thank you to Marcella, Daria, John, and the mentors for the time and work they've invested into the programme, alongside the Ploughshares Fund, who made the programme possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. Really delighted to hear all of the learnings. And we have one more changemaker to go. She has been patiently waiting. Diana, thank you so much. Diana is going to share Gender Matters for Global Peace and Security. And Diana, thank you again so much for your patience. We'll get the slides up in just a second. And over to you.
Thank you. And I'm Diana from Sri Lanka. And I work for Women Education and Research Center, primarily focusing on the women, peace and security agenda. So I'm here, I learned a lot, and especially I am very much keen about the tools that I learned from this whole of process. So it made me to open up some ideas and exchanging with the other practitioners, and it opened up another space for me to understand how gender can work in the realm of the global security and peace. So primarily what I focused is on this, please go to the next slide. Visioning through 3H framework, which is 3 horizons. So under that, I figured we could work with, like, how does the extended present look like? So how the gender is focused. So if you look at the peace and security elements of UN 1325, it's gender focused, yes, of course, but does it focus nuclear safety security? It's not focused. So if you look at the power of multilateral institution, a lot of institutions are combined by a lot of male domination, but there's no space for women, I would say. And how would look like the power of global south? Yes, indeed, it's a very good the power with all the money, technology, and including the nuclear research is going on through global south. So does it make any progressive to the security? In my understanding, no. So the gender is not focused. So how does these challenges, what are the clashes in this, especially focusing on the women and also the nuclear safetyness? So in terms of when you see the nuclear security research, only few women are participating. So there are gaps in that. And also looking at the private sector is more like a capitalism and more less and less opportunity for women. Or women are taken for granted in that private sector realm. And also the borderline transnational threats affecting women and girls. Currently, you're looking at the context of the war of Ukraine and Ukraine, Russia, and all of that currently going on. All it's happening. The threats are again for women, and there is a bigger gap for the nuclear security need to be addressed. And also looking at the women and peace and security, a lot of things are talks about policies. When you look at it, when you're addressing the nuclear safetiness is not there anymore, which is always focuses on the relief and the recovery and what you can do after the war, how do you do the counseling for the women, but there's nothing mentioned about how to do the nuclear safety or how to eliminate from the policy making. So the women's participation in that particular segment is not to be seen. Please, next slide. So looking at all that, what I learned from the Changemaker program, and what I found, this would be the new paradigm for the new future for women. So in order to do that, more feminist movement need to be made and to create dialogue with the powerful nations. Example, to bring these movements from the global south and talking with the powerful nations, powerful actors in the system, so we can have a dialogue and bring an importance of the nuclear safetiness. And along with that, we can talk about the promoting gender equality and other initiatives and programs which supports the women in the nuclear safety by engaging feminist movements and also to interconnect the north, global south and global north, to have a interconnectedness. And especially my focus in the because the final new resolution is with the work and also what I learned from the change making perspective. I thought, looking at the 2073, we need to slowly start building new resolution which focus on the UN 1325 agenda, but reconsidering the importance of looking at the factor of nuclear weapons and the effects for the women and the girls. And by changing the new resolution and also making the other countries to adopt that, make a sustainable and solid elimination on the nuclear weapons. So this is my, I think, ambitious towards to the next 50 years. Next slide, please. Yeah. So so the future looks through the feminist lens. So what I have come up with the future where, like in 2073, acknowledge the crucial role of women in the peace and security, especially emphasizing on the nuclear safetiness, and which can be established through the healthy women movements. And also giving capacity for the women movements and influencing them on the UN 132 agenda. And also to revise the resolution by prioritizing the safetiness of the nuclear safety and security. And by doing this, you will advance the gender equality, and also you will bring a lot of initiative and programs, and you can participate, empower the women movement from the grassroots or the ground level or the community level. And also, it's not limited to one particular country. It can go around the world, because nuclear power is now becoming more power at the moment with all the political interaction at the moment with country to country. So this is the best time for women to women being bolstered, and they can become a crucial point for making dialogues with all the political grounds at the moment. So this is what my learning point, and this is my ambitious to bring in because of my work and all. And I'm thankful for the Changemakers program, that it opened up a lot of insights in me, and also the insights from the others. And I was able to create something more achievable for 2073, which I'm hoping for. Thank you, John. And thank you for all the team of SOIF.
Thank you so much, Diana. We really appreciate all of the reflections and insights and learnings and feedback, of course, that's been shared. Realize that we have about 14 minutes left. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. We do have just a few notes relative to some next steps and, of course, what hopefully can come next. But before that, we, of course, want to give the floor to the mentors. Just a quick note to say how amazing that they've been supporting the journey, creating lots of shared learning and insight. And so even though they've been so fantastic, we've been asking so much of them. I'm going to ask something of them again. If they could possibly shorten and just try to make it a few minutes each, that would be great. But really delighted to have so many of the mentors joining, including those who aren't sharing today as well. Many of them are on the call. So we're going to kick off with Nok. Nok, over to you.
Thank you. And you might hear some background noise. I'm sorry, I'm not, the internet at home is not working, so I'm outside. But I just want to share my learning through like the work with peace and security. And mainly, I would like to start with the complexity because, you know, we're working with multiple parties with complex issues. And I think that in order to tackle to find a solution to a problem, we have to acknowledge the type of problems or type of situation we're engaged with, and I think that I usually just use convened framework in order to kind of identify what kind of problem it is in order to find the right solution or right strategy to tackle the problem. Next, please. And next one is to be to have some empathy, to kind of listen deeply to the other parties and make every voices heard, and also and this help us to understand the diverse perspectives and understand what kind of way of thinking that they have in order to kind of like build trust and also build coalition. Next one, please. And last, I would like to share some note on the self-reflection as a participator or as a people who are working on foresight. Sometimes we see so many problems and we just limit ourselves and we tend to kind of like block our imagination, and that is the main obstacle for creating solution for the problems. So we, in order to be able to understand the problem thoroughly, we should have try to put ourselves in the flow moment by kind of like eliminating self-doubt, and also kind of try to unlock our full potential so that we can be in that flow state. And then by being in that state, we can have the freedom to explore new ways of thinking, and also to be able to break away from the tradition that kind of block our mental thinking. And that's my reflection for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nok, and thanks for hopping outside to join us. Really appreciate you sharing insights. I know you have to run, so good to see you. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Up next, we have Hira. Hira, thank you again for all of the insights that you brought as a mentor, and we'll toss it over to you.
Okay, hi, this is Hira, and I'm a humanitarian and development professional residing in Pakistan, a scholar of conflict studies and an alumnus of National Defense University here. Well, next slide. The extract I took from this journey is a nexus of a climate and a conflict. We all need to understand that there is a strong linkage between climate change and conflicts. You get outputs in present, but outcomes and impacts awaits for you in the future. So there is a psychosocial impact because the people affectees have like faced a lot of trauma. They lost their livestock, life, shelter, goods. So this is also a trigger to the existing underlying conflict as well, particularly man-made conflicts and man-made war threats. So when you are in a rehab status and the IDPs and refugees are already vulnerable, these natural disasters, create a chaotic situation for them. And the main target is vulnerable community, which is women and children. So in the future, I suggest a prevention and safeguarding measures. The global conflict prevention policies must include a safeguarding assurance in their implementation methodology, referral mechanisms, reporting mechanism, and cascading or trickle downward same policies to the country level, involving multinational companies, NGOs, LEAs, governance, youth, change makers, influencers. Next slides. I had a interaction with a lot of change makers here, like Declan, Sebastian, and Diana during the journey. We have like worked together in a lot of material, particularly we've worked with the mis and disinformation as well. When media, whether contemporary or traditional, tell you a story 100 times, even if it's a lie, you would believe it. The fact check is missing in many academic courses. Future youth is more inclined to believe on AI generated content that could include misinformation and convert it into disinformation to create a propaganda, especially when there is a war and there is a conflict going on. So there is a mental health and psychosocial support. The trauma induced through all conflict is neglected, which might affect future parents and kids. This immediate response of any conflict should be mental health and psychosocial report, as Diana mentioned, that women, the female participation is very much important in all the segments of the society. And then there is a climate change and geopolitical instability that which Declan and Sebastian focused on, that there is a deterrence, war threats, nuclear threat, and there is an uncertain announcement of conflicts going on in the world. So we all need to consider all the points which change makers and mentors have just mentioned in this session of today. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Hira. I know the slides say Abril, but I know Amjad, we weren't sure if you were going to be able to make it. So maybe we pull the slides quickly, and Amjad, we'll toss it over to you. And thanks so much for joining us. And then Abril will have you up next.
Yeah, all right. Perfect. Thank you so much, John. And apologies, Abril, for stepping in for you. But it was just really, I realize time is short, but just a couple of things. One is to kind of say how much I appreciate the learning journeys, right? I think more than just being a mentor, I think I've also been able to learn from you guys, and I think that for me is clear. So that there's a two-way process in this, right? It's not about just us as mentors coming in and imparting that knowledge, but also learning from you. I think maybe three things that jump up for me. First is this aspect of collectivity. So it's not just looking at one thing in silos, but looking at the collective ecosystem that is there. And I think this is something that we need to think about more when we often come at it from our own silos, and I think we need to break that. The second one is about diversity being a positive disruption. When you have different perspectives coming in, it gives you different insights, and I think this is what we've learned today. And then that leads me to my third point, which is this aspect of some of you may have come across it, the concept of urgent optimism, which has been coined by many futurists, the desire to act immediately to tackle an obstacle, combined with the belief that we have hope for success. And I didn't really kind of understand it until coming and learning from you guys today, that we have to be urgent optimists, otherwise we wouldn't survive in this world. So with that, I'm going to quickly pass it on to Abril. Thank you so much for having me, and I really look forward to being part of the next journeys, and good luck with the next phases of your work. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Amjad. So glad you're able to join. Abril, over to you.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Abril Chimad, and I'm based in Mexico City. And I was also part of the mentors, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, John, Marcela, and Daria for this opportunity. And part of my reflections of what I've noticed in this learning journey, it's the observing the otherness, the part of being different and from the familiar and oneself. And I think that this group and this cohort is a great example of observing the otherness, and that it's very necessary for security and peace. Talking about peace and security, and well, the part of the setting aside as the expert hat, I think that to be humble doing this type of work and this type of exercises and do the active listening and observation is very important, not only for the mentors, but also for everyone who is involved. And for focusing on the higher need to promote empathy and cultural understanding. And I think that it was very notorious during the cohort that was a very cultural and diverse diversity within the people that attend. And also, how do we embrace the discomfort as part of learning? Some of the things that I've noticed during this path is that the questions are not being asked just because sometimes it's discomforting, or probably it's not something that we used to think in a daily basis, but it is also important to think about the future and also to include the unusual aspect in decision making. Can we pass to the next slide, please, John? And me as a learner, as a mentee, also why I was asking why it is important of the creation of these spaces and time for observation and learning of the otherness. And this absence of high-level decision making spaces impacts the other. So these type of spaces are very, very, very important for this. And essentially understand and acknowledge the complexity of diversity of the world. And I think that most of my colleagues and the mentees already mentioned it. And promoting public awareness and advocacy for marginalized community. It is very important, and consider ethical aspects in decision-making processes. Sometimes it's one way or the other, and not all the voices are included. And also fostering solidarity and allyship across different groups, and actively challenging systemic biases and prejudices. I think these spaces are important for these type of exercises. And that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Abril. Wow, mentors, you really nailed it on the speed there. That was fantastic. We have a whole 2 minutes left to go. We, of course, envision some time for open discussion. Certainly hope that we can do that in the chat, but I think the open discussion would really be fantastic for what's coming next. So, Marcella, that's your cue. Over to you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, and great to hear from everybody. So this has been a pilot to see how we can use futures and foresight tools within the peace and security sectors, and seeing how we might use these tools to not only bring in diverse voices, but also to reimagine some of those desirable futures for peace and security, and also bringing in the nuclear lens. And we have really learned so much from this journey, with insights and ideas from the change makers on how we can improve and work towards expanding our impact. And as you may have gathered from some of the presentations already, whilst we've built an appetite for leaders and change makers to better understand and use foresight, there is so much more to be done to incorporate this into the work being done in these sectors or across these fields, and move into practice to help seed some of that sectoral transformation. So we are now looking to integrate this learning by building out the journey into a longer, possibly a 1-year project with new elements. If we've realized so many opportunities to expand our impact, having run this pilot, including going beyond just a single cohort, building out the intergenerational aspect, which we've seen reap amazing insights with the relationships we've seen here presented with the mentees and the mentors. But we can't do it alone. And we will be looking for those of you who might want to join us on this next journey, invite you to partner with us in various ways, however that might look, whether it's through direct support for the change makers, or nominating and sponsoring next generation leaders to attend, or otherwise. So please do get involved and co-create with us that next phase. In addition to that, we have uncovered some amazing insights that the change makers have come up with, and those fantastic ideas, but that's just the beginning. So although the program has ended, that does not mean it's the end of the thinking. So we hope to transition into action through a community of practice, which has been mentioned a number of times now. And we invite the change makers, mentors, the wider peace and security community and nuclear community to join us in building on these ideas further, exploring what actions we can take and how we can take this further, and take those ideas forward. So that is it, and we are on time. Back to you, John.
Amazing. Wow, we really, came in that last quarter mile, really blazing there. I just want to really close by saying what an amazing team effort it was. Leah, who's not with us, also stepped in and did some fantastic tech work. Of course, we're exceedingly thankful to all the operational support that SOIF provides that really makes something like this even within the realm of possibility. And just to say, from my own perspective, what a phenomenal delight it has been to collaborate with Daria and Marcella again, and really to say what a truly special journey it's been. Shared learning and discovery with all the change makers and all the mentors, and of course all the other senior advisors that we'd brought in as well. It's really been special, and most importantly, it's not over. We look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing where it goes from here. So absolutely want to thank everyone. Do please connect, and would love to see this grow and mutate and evolve in ways that possibly are unknown, but hopefully unknown not being a bad thing. So thanks so much, everyone.